not start the recording. Whoever is my my wingman out there tonight, thank you very much. Let's see what else. I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, supportgroup@unjury.com. That is a good email for you to use. You can send your questions. If we don't get to them,
that's all right.
You can send, you threw me, Jerome.
I'm sorry, I'm testing left and right.
Okay.
I have to make sure that things read left to right because I got a tattoo.
Oh,
and I want to make sure
this is a
that
good story.
I want to make I woke up in a gutter
I love it.
in Tijuana. And have we been talking about March for Me yet? Just to change
we
the
did.
subject?
Well, we did mostly. I was telling Dr. Bond what we were doing and explaining what a cool thing it is. And I asked the group how things were going. Yep, The Exciting Life of Brad Pitt. Jerome Pitt.
Yes, yeah. Well, I woke up in this gutter with a tattoo in Tijuana.
Mm. Oh, there you go. There you go. 30, 30, 30.
30 grams of protein 3 times a day. I mean, what good friends I have. They didn't tattoo some maiden or a crazy horse or something like that. So 30, 30, 30. In case anybody was thinking of forgetting 30, 30, 30. Unicorn.
I'm glad they put it on your arm too. I mean, there's so many other places.
I was gonna say it could have gone right here.
Right. Anyway, so there you go. 30 grams of protein 3 times a day. Live by it.
I'd ask for my money back, Victoria says.
Right.
She'd ask for her money back.
I think it's pretty neat and tidy, don't you think?
I think you could go back and in your little 0 circles, you should get like some rings of flowers or maybe some cool faces. And yeah, I don't know. I'd dress that up a bit.
More color too, maybe.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You had to, Jerome, you had to write that in reverse, right? So that we can read it.
Yeah, no,
wow,
it's actually,
that took some skill. Yeah.
It's an interesting question. It looks like 30, 30, 30 to me. I did it wrong the first time I did it. I had more time, but this time I had to kind of hurry. So anyway, needs more detail. All right. You know, we got all sorts of tattoo art critics out here tonight. It's tough. It's tough.
Well, tough.
If you remember the message, I'll be happy.
Yeah, if you're going to go all in, I see 030303. Yeah, if you're going to go all in as the president of a company who sells protein, I think a 30-30-30 tattoo is appropriate.
There we go. Yeah, beautiful.
All right, everybody. Well, the only thing that I have left to say is just to remind people that in the chat, we love to keep this very positive, uplifting, and supportive. So think before you type. Everybody's on their own journey and nobody's doing it wrong. We're just all figuring it out together. So cheer each other on, be happy for each other, and it'll be a really nice evening. So let's see, attendance receipts. I like to remind people in case you need an attendance receipt, they do come automatically. We've been sending them out much slower than normal, and I apologize for that. We're just overloaded at the moment, and there's just a lot going on. I think March for Me, there's extra emails, extra texts, all kinds of things going out. So hang in there, we'll get them to you. If you need to call the office and ask for Christy and to get something right away, feel free to do that. I can help you in a pinch. Otherwise, let's see, I think we're going to do introductions, and then I don't have a warm-up question for you, but I did find it's kind of a quote that I wanted to share. It's more of just a nice thing that I read today. And I think sometimes we all need a reminder of things that are really important and things that we should, if we can make a little list, things that we can remember every day. And here's number 1. So this is 6 things. Everything takes time. Nothing goes quickly. Nothing worth it goes quickly. Number 2 is other people are not the answers to our happiness. Number 3 is grow and never stop working on you. Number 4, change is inevitable. 5, your mistakes don't define you. And 6, you are beautiful and a powerful being capable of so much. So I read that and it sort of touched my heart. So I thought I would read it to you all. It's always nice to have nice reminders. So that's in lieu of my warm-up question tonight, even though I do have a poll question for you before Dr. Bond gets talking. But I do want to do an official introduction in case you've never been here before to see Dr. Bond. I'm Christy, this is Jerome. That's all that you need to know there. No, we show up here on Wednesday nights. If you come to the Wednesday night meetings, you're going to see Christy and Jerome. Jerome is the president and co-founder of UNJURY Protein, and the reason that we get to do this cool thing every Wednesday night. So welcome, Jerome, as usual. Always glad to have you here. But Dr. Bond is the gentleman of the evening.
Sorry.
And oh,
sorry, I was on mute. And you are too, Dr. Bond.
Oh yes, like, yeah, I can unmute. Yeah.
Yeah. The reason we're here tonight, though, is to hear Dr. Bond, and he is going to talk about pain management or living with pain and obesity and the complications that that brings. So we're excited about that. But and many of you are here tonight because you have been on another meeting when Dr. Bond came on and you were so excited to come back. But for those of you who are here for the first time, Dr. Bond is a psychologist. He lives down in the Florida area, and we'd love to spread him around the country because every time we do one of these meetings, everybody's like, how do I get to talk to Dr. Bond? But he's in Florida. He did his bachelor's degree at University of Florida, and then he did his master's degree and his PhD work in clinical psychology and behavioral medicine at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. He uses mindfulness-based interventions and principles, cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, and motivational interviewing as part of his practice. And he has certifications in cognitive behavioral therapy for substance use disorders, insomnia, eating disorders, and therapy for trauma. So he is very well versed in everything that we often cover on this meeting in one way or another. It's all important stuff. But tonight, like I said, he's covering pain management and living with obesity. So we're excited to hear from you, Dr. Bond. I wanted to ask the group before we get going, though, how many people are actually living with pain? So let's do a poll question.
And Christy, if I might add too, if you can say pain and fatigue. So fatigue often goes hand in hand with pain.
Interesting. Okay. So are you living with pain at least some of the time? That's the question. So first you want to do your yes or no. And then if you want to share where some of that pain is, you can also choose that. So you can choose multiple things here. And we're getting lots of yeses, 100%. Yes, me, yes, in the chat. So we've got lots of people. Yes, in my right foot. Yes, in multiple sites, joints and muscles. Yes, I do. Knees, pain and fatigue. Yes, constant pain. Wow. You are here for a reason tonight, Dr. Bond. Yes, fatigued, migraines. Oh, I didn't even think of migraines. I didn't add that to the list.
Yep,
Yeah.
headaches.
Can everybody see the survey question up there? Are people answering there too, Christy?
They are. Yep. I'm going to give it just maybe 5 or 6 more seconds here. We've got some numbers still rolling in.
Yeah, Christy, I was like looking at it. I'm like here, like trying to click on it. I was like, I want to vote too. And then it says hosts and panelists can't vote. I was like,
oh no, so sorry. All right, here we go. I'm going to end the polling and we will share these results. So these are pretty incredible. 83% say yes, that they're living with pain at least some of the time. And big one, knees and back. That's probably no surprise, at least 50% of people, but another about 20% each, neck, shoulders, all joints, or something else. So that is eye-opening. And I'm sure you probably knew what the answers to that would be ahead of time, Dr. Bond.
Yeah, well, it always surprises me just how much like pain is so pervasive. It's everywhere for most people, but yet
Mhm.
it's still a very invisible kind of like condition
Mm,
for a lot of
mhm,
people. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But I think this is a good example of almost everyone is surprised and when they're like, "Oh, whoa!" Like pain is for a lot of people experience pain, and
mhm,
yet we don't talk a lot about it.
mhm.
And I'm going to go into some reasons why we don't do that, but we'll get into it. So.
Okay,
But
excellent. Yeah, I forgot to say one of your credentials, which is not, you don't list it on your website or anywhere that I've seen, but it's a credential that we would all give you is just your calm and wonderful voice and presence. I think every time you come, we all think, ah, we just feel relieved that Dr. Bond was here.
oh,
So
thank you.
that's a stamp of approval that we're giving you.
I love it. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Good.
There you go.
All right, I'm
Absolutely.
going to turn things over to you,
Uh,
Dr. Bond. If you let me
so-
make sure that you have, I don't know if you need the screen, but I'll make sure you have screen sharing privileges and you can take it away.
Great. And then I think, Jerome, did you have anything that you were going to say a few moments
I
ago?
was just going to say it's a degree, the PhD, and then the AHH. Ah,
Mm.
Oh,
sensation.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Good.
Well, so first of all, thank you guys so much. Thank you so much, Jerome and Christy, for letting me come and chat with you guys. It's always fun. I enjoy this stuff.
Hmm,
So, um,
super.
and yeah, and so I'm just excited to be here. Excited to talk about pain, especially as it relates to the idea of being healthy with weight and weight management and weight loss, and really honestly being able to live your life because it's a huge piece that shows up for a lot of people. Um, so yeah, so I'm excited. So um, what I can do first is just kind of tell you guys a little bit about why I think pain is a helpful kind of piece to talk about, and then I do have some pictures and slides that we're going to talk about. We're also going to do a lot of activities today, just because I will say, I've presented to you guys a few times, but one of the things that I think is so crucial about living with pain is that so much of the work, the psychological work around chronic pain, you have to experience some of these things, and it's not necessarily about thinking about them, if that makes sense.
Mm,
Um, and so I want to make sure we do some mindfulness activities and some self-compassion ones because they
mhm.
are. So you'll probably be even more relaxed by the end of this, so which will
Perfect.
be a good thing.
Perfect.
So okay,
Looking forward to it.
um, great, excellent. Well, good. So the first thing actually I want to start out with is it's an affectionate breathing kind of mindfulness activity, and there's absolutely a reason why I want to start with some mindfulness activities, and we'll go into it in a little bit. But suffice it to say, when you're living with chronic pain or diffuse pain, I saw a few people mention fibromyalgia or lupus, which also comes with a lot of symptoms that aren't easily explained sometimes. And your pain symptoms can kind of be in all sorts of different areas, just depending on what's happening. Um, the real challenge is that it's hard to realize that your body is constantly stressed out from this stuff. It is constantly overwhelmed. Your nervous system is kind of, just on heightened red alert nonstop when you're living with pain. And so that's why I absolutely want to start with a mindfulness kind of self-compassion exercise first. So what I want you guys to do for each of you, wherever you're at home, or if you're in the car, maybe don't do this, but you can still listen along. But I would say, stay focused if you got to be focused. But um,
Yes.
what I want you to do is just kind of find a position that's comfortable for you right now and where you just feel supported. And I want you to just allow your eyes to maybe gently close. They can either fully close or partially close, whatever works best for you. And I want you just to take a few kind of slow, easy, just breaths. Just kind of gently breathing in and then just exhaling and just releasing that breath. And as you exhale, I want you just to practice just releasing any tension that might be in your body, releasing any stress from the day. It's a Wednesday, thank God. Friday is close. Any of that tension that's built up for you, just kind of let that go. And if you like, as you continue just gently breathing air in and then out, I want you to try and place maybe a hand over your heart, or you can put your hands in your lap, or some other thing that's just kind of a soothing kind of physical experience for you. And the reason why I want you to use physical touch is that this kind of exercise is that you're not just bringing kind of mindful awareness, but you're bringing really like an affectionate awareness to yourself and to your breathing. And you can just kind of leave your hands there or wherever you found to be just a comfortable spot as you just gently breathe air in and then out. And I want you just to really begin to notice your breathing in your body. Just kind of feeling your body breathe in. And then feeling your body breathe out. And I want you just to notice how your body is just naturally nourished on the in breath. And it just naturally relaxes with the out breath. And I want you to see if you can almost begin to let your body just breathe you. And what I mean by that is that there's nothing you need to do right now. You don't have to do anything other than just simply letting your body do what it naturally does. Just breathe air in and then out. And I want you to next see if you can begin to notice the rhythm to your breathing. I want you to see if you can notice the rhythm to the air flowing in and the air flowing out. And take some time to just feel that natural rhythm of your breathing. Feel your whole body just begin to maybe subtly move with the breath. Kind of like the movement of the sea or like waves on the ocean, just gently going to and fro, going forwards and backwards. And the goal here again is just to find that rhythm of your own breath, that rhythm of your own natural pattern of the air flowing in and then flowing out. And as you're finding your rhythm, your mind is going to kind of naturally wander and you're going to lose track of your breathing and your rhythm. This is normal and it's natural and it's going to keep happening. And so, as soon as you've realized that it's happened, I just want you to gently acknowledge it. And then, without judgment, just bring yourself back to that rhythm of your breathing. Just return yourself to the rhythm of the air flowing in and flowing out. Just allow your entire body to be gently rocked and caressed, maybe even kind of internally caressed by your breathing. But again, the only thing you need to do right now is literally just breathe. And if it feels right for you, I want you to see if you can just kind of give yourself over to that rhythm of breathing, kind of letting your breathing be all that there is in your mind right now. Just breathing. But in this moment, you're being that breath. You're focusing on the air coming in and the air flowing out. And again, your mind might wander. We have curious minds. They like to think about random stuff. And this is normal and natural. And once you've realized that it's happened, just gently acknowledge it. And then without judgment, just bring yourself back to that rhythm of your breathing. Return yourself to that air flowing in and that air flowing out. And now I want you just to gently kind of release your attention from your breath, kind of sitting quietly for these next few moments and maybe your own experience. And I want you to allow yourself to literally just feel whatever it is that you're feeling right now. To literally just be as you are in this moment. And as you're just giving yourself these moments, I just want you to ask yourself, what did I notice? What did I feel? And how am I feeling now? And then whenever you're ready, you can just gently open up your eyes and kind of join us back here on the video call here whenever you're ready. So, all right. So welcome back, everybody. So I'll just go with Christy. I can see your picture there. So we don't know what else is doing. They might be in their own little like still zone. So that's totally fine.
Yes.
Yeah. And so let me ask you, like, what was that like for you guys? Like, what was that experience like to feel? And I see a few comments, sleepy.
My shoulders are less tense. I
Yeah.
almost fell asleep, relaxing, awesome. Yeah, some good stuff.
Absolutely. So good. And the key thing here that I want really to highlight is how much your physical body responds to exercises like what we just did.
Mm.
Now, I always have clients who are like, Doc, I did it. It was horrible. Like, I can't ever like get into that breathing. I was just like, I was thinking about what I got to do later. Like, so I always have this client, which is totally okay. But for a good number of us, the first kind of experience of this is very much a relaxation kind of response.
Mm.
And, let me ask you guys, how do you think that applies to physical pain? How do you think being able to find ways to relax yourself, why do you think that's connected to physical pain?
Well, when the opposite of being relaxed is being tense.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that that tension, if you've got joint problems, muscle problems, certainly is not going to help those to get better. It might make them worse.
Right. You got it. Absolutely. Like it's, one of the key things that they talk about with chronic pain is, so a few things. Number one, chronic pain has everything to do with your nervous system and how we tense muscles and how we also, respond to pain injuries. Almost every one of my clients that are living with pain in some way have usually had an injury of some kind, whether it's a back injury, a leg injury. And it really doesn't matter what it is. What really kind of happens is once you experience pain and difficulty with pain, it is powerful. And what I mean by that is it's powerful usually in a pretty bad way for a lot of people, meaning that it really can kind of take over life and it can really sap your joy and sap your energy. And so one of the reasons why talking about pain, especially as it relates to, physical activity and when we're talking about like your body and weight management, is that pain, number one, is really, really good at shaping human behavior. And this is one of those things that are like so important to kind of recognize, is that pain is really good at what it does, which the goal of pain is that it's usually meaning to tell you to stop doing something in some way, right? Like if you experience, like if you stub your toe, you're like, ouch, like let me like not move my toe on something.
I'm not going to walk for a while. Yeah.
You got it. And what's really interesting, and there's a big distinction here between chronic pain, which is pain that you've been experiencing for a significant amount of time. I would say honestly a solid about 6 months or so at least, versus like acute pain. Acute pain is, something you stub your toe on something. That's a good example of acute pain. And it's usually pain that is due to like inflammation of some kind, right? Like there's an injury initially, and the pain is kind of there.
Yeah.
But chronic pain is a little different. But I'll pause there, Jerome. Did you have something?
Yeah, I just sent a message to the panelists. Someone sent a message to the panelists. And I didn't know if the participants' problems were relaxation related or not. Without naming any names, can you just kind of comment to the person if you have anything to offer?
Let me pull up. Is it in the Q&A or it's in the chat box here? Okay.
It's in the
It
chat.
was in the chat.
Okay, gotcha.
But if you go up a few posts from the one I sent to the panelists, you could click on that person's name and give them a response.
Okay, gotcha. I think I see Jerome, and that's the one. Yeah, I see Jerome.
Keep going up 1, 2, 3, just 3 posts above that.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yes, now I see. Okay,
That person's sending the message. If you click on her name, you could respond to her.
Gotcha. Okay.
Privately.
Let me see if I can find.
And in the meantime, I'm going to say I loved the ocean, and I pictured seaweed, and I was like a piece of seaweed underwater in a gentle, oscillating shoreline current. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, Franny and I had a little rhythm. She was chewing something on my lap, and as I would go one way, her chewing would pull me back the other. And so we had a nice little thing going on.
Nice. I can see, so I can tell you guys, I can see the name. I can't click on it.
Oh, really?
Hold on.
No?
Maybe I can copy it.
No, you have to click on their name or else. Okay, well,
Okay.
we're not going to be able to do too much, but I'll tell her to
yeah, we could send a message.
Yeah. I would say, in general, for anyone who might be experiencing any types of muscle types of related things when you try and do relaxation, is that you definitely want to take it at a slow pace. So if you're experiencing some kind of muscle tension as a result of doing just some of the the mindful breathing that we just did, I would say do whatever you typically do to cope with pain whenever it flares up for you. Just because right now the goal is for you to essentially to get out of the pain experience that you're having right now versus just trying to stay in the pain experience, if that makes sense. So
sure.
Yeah. So I'd say whatever you traditionally do might be helpful. Yeah. But coming back to the reason why pain is so relevant is because it does this, right? Like pain can definitely take over your life, and honestly can do it in pretty quick ways. And another key thing that shows up, and I do that work a lot with this with clients too, is that it really impacts your loved ones too, like your significant other, your family members. And one of the really challenging things is that I would say almost every client that I've worked with that has experienced chronic pain in some way is also kind of dealing with some depression too at some point. Just because pain, again, it makes your world, it shrinks it down and to where you have fewer and fewer kind of resources. But before I kind of take a deep dive into that, what I want to do, I'm going to show some pictures and kind of walk you guys through the approach that I take with why understanding your pain is so important. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen here and let me know once you see it. You should see like a brain picture, I think there.
Yeah, we got it. It looks good.
Perfect. Good. Okay, excellent. And so what this is kind of a simplified model of what pain is. But one of the important things that I think is really helpful is that this model, I think, really explains a lot for clients. There's technically a newer model called the neuromatrix model of chronic pain and how we experience that. But really that just means that pain is the fancy word here that no one really needs to know. It's called multifactorial pain. It doesn't matter what we call that. It just means a lot of stuff impacts pain, which we know that to kind of be true. And one of the important things that we're going to talk about with gate control, theory about pain is a few things. Number one, pain is not just in your head. And I would say that's the number one thing when clients come in to see me, they're like, Doc, I know this pain. It's in my foot, it's in my leg, it's in my back, it's in my injury. I totally get that. 100%. Your pain is not in your brain. But I will tell you that where you process pain absolutely is in your brain. What do you guys think about that? That the pain itself is not in your brain, but where you process the pain is 100% in your brain.
Yeah, that's
That's,
interesting.
that's weird. That's weird to think about what you're experiencing where, therefore.
Mm-hmm. You got it. Fascinating stuff about how pain works in the body, which we're going to kind of take a little deeper dive here. So the first kind of piece on this picture is really pain signals, and that's on the bottom of this kind of graph here. And what this is really kind of referring to is it's pain signals coming from your nervous system. And really that would be, you know, from anywhere, like from all the way from your fingertips to your toes, to your back, to really anywhere. It's just coming up the spinal cord, through your nervous system, up the spinal cord into your brain there. And the reason why this is important is because of how we experience pain very quickly and how we respond to pain very quickly. Because let me ask you this, you know, if why do you think there's an advantage for human beings to respond to pain quickly? Like, what's the big deal about like feeling pain quickly? Like, why does that matter?
We can stop ourselves from injuring ourselves further.
Exactly, 100%. Your response to pain is typically meant to avoid damage in some way or additional damage, right? It's kind of like, you know, if you put your hand on a hot stove, you don't want to like wait there for a little while and be like, am I sure my hand is like, you know, getting a little toasty, you know, before like it goes on.
Yes.
Like, no, you pull it away in split seconds, like
Mm.
literally. And there's even some research that says you don't even think about it. It actually goes straight, it's straight to your spinal cord and comes right back out again.
Mhm.
And what's really kind of fascinating about this is how much your nervous system really influences the transmission of pain signals. And why that's so important is because of how this stuff enters your brain and how it processes it. So we know these signals come up through your spinal cord into your brain. And then we also know that your brain isn't just a passive kind of receiver of these signals. It's not just that your brain says, oh, by the way, Daniel, your left hand hurts. Like, you know, we should do something about that. Um, you know, your brain is not just passively receiving signals, your brain is processing this stuff. And so we know that brain activity can really determine how wide or how narrow the gate is that pain experiences can have in our brain. And so what I mean by that is that your brain can really serve as it can't, because this question comes up all the time too. Clients are like, can I use my brain to just turn off all my pain and like never feel any of it? And I would say, you know, good question. And what I can tell you is that there are, you know, very high levels of meditative kind of, you know, individuals who have been able to kind of achieve kind of nirvana like states that have been able to turn off pain and the responses to pain. Would I say that that's what most people can get? Probably not. But is it possible? Yes. But I would say our goal is not to use your brain to turn off pain per se, but is to recognize how much your brain can make pain either amplify it or reduce it. And that's a key part of when I talk with clients about when I'm working with them about helping them obtain pain relief is that number one, we can't make your pain go away. We can't make that injury that happened to you, you know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that happened to you, you know, a year ago. We can't make it go away. But what we can do is work on the ways that you respond to that injury so that you can be smarter and not harder, and work smarter, but not harder, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And a key part that this shows up, a lot of my clients who I've worked with that seek weight loss surgery in some way, several of them have sought weight loss surgery so that they can lose weight and then seek usually like a knee replacement or another type of surgery to help manage pain. And so again, these things are super interrelated in terms of if you can understand what pain's doing to your body, you can understand what movement is, and why we can, you know, essentially start to feel negative thinking about movement and stuff. So sorry, total diatribe, went on a little bit of a
No, it's
tangent
good.
there. But there's really kind of two key areas in the brain that are involved with your pain volume. You have your thought center and we have your feeling center. And again, these are very simplified models. There's technically a lot more in the brain that's happening here, but we don't need to get into that. Really, what you just need to know is that there's the way that you think about things and there's the way that you feel about things. And that these two kind of areas of your brain directly interact with pain and pain signals. So much so that let me ask you this, what kind of thoughts and emotions do you think might make the gate wider, like for you? Like if you were to let in more of the pain signal, meaning that the pain would just be getting worse, what kinds of ways of thinking and what kind of emotions do you think you might feel that could make pain stronger?
Fear.
Mm-hmm. You
Any
got it.
any negative emotion, almost anxiety. Yeah.
You got it.
Sadness
Mhm.
about the injury.
Absolutely. Or, honestly, a big one that I see for a lot of my clients is really this a pervasive sense of something that's unjust. And
Mm,
here's one of the key, I think, challenges that shows up with pain. No one that is living with chronic pain, I believe, deserves to live with chronic pain. Chronic pain is truly a crappy experience to live with because
mm,
of so many layers to it. But number
mm,
one, the biggest one is that you're living with it constantly.
mm,
And the same is true of chronic fatigue too. Like,
mm,
you wake up every day, you're not sure what your day is going to look like. You might have energy, you might not. Your pain might flare up, it might not. You kind of feel like you've lost a lot of control in your life.
mhm,
And so it makes sense why a lot of kind of, really negative thinking, what you were saying earlier, Jerome, and also really strong emotions can amplify that gait, meaning it can definitely make the pain a heck of a lot worse.
yeah.
And what kinds of thoughts and emotions do you think might lead to narrowing the gate? Like, what do you guys think?
Optimism, hope, happiness, joy, the opposite of all those other things.
Bingo.
Engaged with something.
Mhm. You
Mm,
got it. I love what you said there, Jerome. Purpose and meaning
Hmm.
are huge when it comes to living with chronic pain. And to what I would say is living in a way that's more successful. And distraction, I think, is a great technique too.
mm,
However, I think there's usually some limits to distraction, which I think it's just one of many tools I think can be helpful.
Hmm.
Um, but you're absolutely right. There's so many pieces that are relevant for here. And, one of the key things that I work with my clients on is we really got to think through what matters to you in life. Just like we've done before, we talked about, with values as it relates to weight loss. Like if you want to sustain weight loss as a long-term habit, you really have to know the why behind what you're doing. You have to
mhm,
know the why am I doing this? And I'll be honest, a number on a scale is usually not a long-term motivator.
mhm,
Um, it can work well for short-term periods of time. And, I don't necessarily think the scale is necessarily horrible. I think it's just one of many ways that we can measure overall health. It's not the only way by any means. Um, but I think what's really important about that is recognizing you want to do something. You want to live your life. You want to go walk around a theme park or something. You want to be able to, play with your grandkids. You want to go walk around the mall. These are activities, or you want to go traveling. Like these are things that are the why. And the same shows up with pain too. So yes, those positive emotions can really help to really close the gate. So just to kind of recap, you got your thoughts and your feelings center, and either they can open the pain gate and let in more pain when there's usually kind of some negative emotions, or they can narrow the pain gate and let in less pain when you're kind of on a different kind of mindset there. So again, just kind of quick overview of kind of gate control from that perspective. The key that you want to work on, that I work on with this stuff, is that we can work together so that you can use your brain to work for you rather than against you. And the reason why this is so is because I mentioned a little earlier about this, that pain is a very much an invisible type of injury, meaning that unless someone is physically like grimacing or walking, like there's a disturbance in how their gait is, or there's some other physical thing on the outside, you really don't see pain. You also don't really see fatigue either. And
mm,
so these are invisible experiences that have a daily effect on people. And typically what happens for a lot of people living with chronic pain is that they find that they tend to burn out their social support network really fast. So
mm,
you burn out your significant others, you burn out your friends, and it's mainly because you want relief, but unfortunately the way we go about trying to find relief makes it even worse without even realizing it.
mm,
um, Same is true for sleep. When we try to correct bad sleep, we actually usually tend to make it worse without it getting better, but we can talk
mm.
about that another time too.
Yeah.
um, because that's another one that's connected there. But so
Mhm.
the key again is to work smarter and not harder from that perspective. And so let me ask you guys this, a question here. How do you think self-compassion impacts your pain gate? Like, do you think that learning self-compassion and being kind to yourself, would that maybe make the pain gate wider and let in more pain? Or would it maybe narrow the pain gate and let in less pain? What do you think?
I would guess narrow and let in less pain if you're if you're able to be that soothing person for yourself, if you've kind of, like you said, you've kind of worn out some of the other relationships that you're not getting what you need from them, but if you can give it to yourself in some way, you might be able to
Mhm.
narrow the gate.
Mhm. You got it, 100%. So excellent on that, Christine. In fact, I want to do another kind of self-compassion kind of exercise with you guys again to really kind of highlight why this is so important. And again, my presentation a little bit today, I think is a little bit different. It's more hands-on because with chronic pain, we need to do less of this and more of feeling, more of experiencing this stuff, if that kind of makes sense.
Sure.
So what I want you guys to do, I want you to get in another kind of, position that's calm and comfortable, that's for you. And you can kind of close your eyes, you can keep them open, you can do whatever you want to do, but I want you just to settle into a position where you just naturally kind of feel comforted. And just focus in also on your breathing as you just kind of gently breathe air in and then out and in and out. And I want you to think of a situation right now in your mind's eye. I want you to think of a situation in your life that's causing you some stress. Maybe it's a health problem, a relationship problem, a work problem, or some other struggle. And I want you to choose something that's in that kind of mild to moderate range. Not a huge problem, not necessarily the chronic pain that's coming from an injury or some kind. And the reason why I don't want you to choose something so big is that I want you to build the skill of self-compassion gradually. And so I want you to visualize the sensation or the situation kind of clearly in your mind right now. And I want you just to kind of notice, like, what is the setting? Like, who is saying what to whom? And what's happening? And maybe even more important, what might happen? Like, a lot of times there's a fear about something. And I want you to be curious about what might happen. And I want to make sure that you can kind of feel a little bit of discomfort in your body, not a lot, as you kind of bring this difficulty to mind. And if it's too much difficulty or too much kind of discomfort, maybe choose something again on that mild to moderate range. But now that you've got that situation there in your mind's eye, I want you to try saying this phrase to yourself out loud right now, wherever you're at. I just want you to say, ouch.
Ouch.
Yep, you got it. And the exact phrase doesn't matter. You could say, this hurts, or this is stressful, or you could even say something like, this is a moment of suffering. Like, this is a moment where there's something legitimately that causes me distress right now. And the key thing that you're doing here is that you're just practicing mindfulness. You're just practicing being aware that, yep, I see it. I can feel that discomfort. Doesn't matter what it is. I can feel that discomfort right now. And now I want you to try saying to yourself, I'm not alone.
I'm not alone. That's a
I'm not
harder one.
alone.
Yep. And
I'm
again,
not alone.
you got it. The exact phrase, it does not matter. What matters is that it feels authentic to you. You could say something like, this is how it feels when people struggle in this way. Or you can say, other people with chronic pain experience this just like I do. Or you could say something, a little more general that, life has suffering. Like, there are some things in life that legitimately just suck, if that makes sense. And again, the exact phrasing doesn't matter. What matters is that you're just recognizing that what you're going through is a human experience. That in this moment, you're struggling, it hurts, and you're also not alone in that struggle. And now what I want you to do is I want you to offer yourself the gesture of like a soothing touch. Again, that could be hands in your lap there. You could give yourself a hug. You could put your hand over her heart. Does not matter what it is. But I just want you to feel the physical sensation of that hand. And this part's really important. Physical touch matters. A good reason for that, just try out any massage. As human beings, physical touch has a huge impact on us. And what you're doing is you're giving yourself that physical touch. You're giving yourself that physical sensation there. And now what I want you to do is I just want you to repeat this phrase out loud to yourself. May I be kind to myself.
May I be
May
kind
I
to
be
myself.
kind to myself.
May I give myself what I need.
May I give
May I give myself what
what
I
I
need.
need.
And again, the exact phrase doesn't matter. So you can take that phrase and modify it or maybe come up with your own. Doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that you're practicing kindness to yourself. You know, some phrases could be, may I accept myself as I am, or may I even just begin to accept myself, or may I be strong, or may I be patient. Again, what matters is just simply asking yourself, what words of kindness and support do I need to hear right now in this difficult situation? And this part's really important. If you're having some difficulty with this, which I would say almost every one of my clients has difficulty with this when we first do it, I just want you to imagine that a dear friend that you care about or a loved one, that they're having the same problem as you. Maybe it's chronic pain, maybe it's chronic fatigue, maybe they're struggling with their weight in some way, maybe it doesn't matter what it is. And I just want you to ask yourself, what would you say to this person? Like, what simple message would you want to like deliver to your friend, kind of heart to heart, right? Not something like cheesy that says get well soon, you know, like what would you want to just genuinely say? And sometimes it's not words. Sometimes it's literally just a hand on the shoulder. It's literally just feeling something, or it's sitting and being with something or someone, if that makes sense. So again, this was kind of a quick kind of example of like a self kind of compassion break. And the reason why this is so important is because, again, you're learning to soothe your own nervous system. And if we think about how chronic pain works, is that there's the initial type of injury that you experience. And then what happens is your nervous system gets really kind of sensitized to this stuff because you're in pain that hasn't gone away after at least like 6 months. And so what happens is that your body is always going from like, you know, like a steady level to like alarm bells are blaring, and then it goes back down again, and then alarm bells kind of blare a lot. And what you're essentially what's happening is you're chronically overstimulated when you're living with pain, because you're also probably in fear that your pain's going to flare up again. And I mean, let me pause and ask you, what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about that kind of self-compassion piece and learning to calm your own nervous system? And I'm going to catch up on some of the messages I see. Sorry, there's like 21 new ones. Sorry about that.
All right. Well, I think the whole mindfulness and talking to yourself about it is such a great start, because you get some distance from it. And by being able to look at it, you can feel more in control just from that. If you don't watch yourself, it's easy to, I just picked this up yesterday, or maybe today, catastrophize. Something's bothering you and you only see the bad outcomes. And so all that, so distance and all that is what I liked about it.
You got it. Awesome. I fully agree with you, Drum. I'm also seeing a few comments over here. I saw a few people referencing kind of prayer, which is excellent. You know, honestly, meditation's nothing new. This stuff's been around for centuries, guys. It doesn't really matter how you get there, as long as you get to that space. I think that's really where the healing kind of piece of this is at. And it's because of what your nervous system is doing. And but another thing that I'm gonna put up on the screen here for you guys too, is that it's not just your nervous system. So I'm gonna put this kind of Word document that I have, and I show every one of my clients with pain, and it's about pacing here. So I'm gonna put this up here. Have you guys ever heard of that word pacing before? I know some people are like, oh, like I think
like
I know
I'm
what that
walking
means.
back and forth pacing, or pacing myself, like I'm taking my time so I don't go too fast, that kind of
You got
pacing.
it. Yes, but
Okay.
as it relates to pain, we're going to do it a little bit different way, especially pain and fatigue. So I'm going to put this up here on the screen, and you guys should see like a Word document in front of you, and there should be Joe on the top who does no pacing, and Mary on the bottom who does pacing. And again, these are just kind of figurative examples. But what's really important about chronic pain too, and especially fatigue, is that a lot of people, when you first experience pain, you go through these boom and bust cycles of where you're like, oh my gosh, I woke up, I got energy, let me do as much stuff as I can do because I don't know when the energy is going to leave me. And you've probably had a lot that you haven't been able to do. So you're like, thank goodness, let me just catch up on stuff. And so you might do what Joe does, right? So we're going to look at the same 6-hour period of time. And Joe, wakes up, he does, 2 hours of work, and his pain rating before the work was a 4 out of 10. He does those 2 hours, and then pretty soon his pain kind of flares up because he kind of pushed himself past his threshold, which is a key part that I can talk about. And then all of a sudden he's in pain, like it flares up. Because this is what happens with pain, is that you push yourself past a threshold, and then all of a sudden the pain takes on a life of its own again. And so again, total time here was 6 hours. Total time Joe was spent working was 2 hours. He didn't spend any time resting during that working, and then he was in pain for 4 hours. But let's look at Mary. And again, Mary, this is a great example of, we're going to try and do things smarter, not harder, when it comes to living with chronic pain in your nervous system. So Mary tries an approach where she's like, you know what, I have energy, but let me work for 30 minutes and let me rest for 30 minutes. And work for 30, rest for 30, work for 30, rest for 30, work for 30, rest for 30 the whole time. Mary's pain rating was a 4 out of 10 before she started working. And then what's her pain rating after she starts working? Any kind of volunteers to put that in the chat box there?
Oh, I lost the chat. I can't see. Same. Somebody, Evelyn says the same.
You got it. She's still a 4 out of 10 there. But here's the real kind of kicker. Let me ask you this. Who actually got more work done? Did Mary get more work done, or did Joe get more work done?
Mary. Ernestine is saying Mary.
Yeah.
Mary.
Put your money on Mary.
You got it. Mary got more done. And this is the part that seems really counterintuitive, especially when we think about our nervous system, is that we're like, oh my gosh, let me put more work in to get stuff done. But when you can pace, what you're doing is that Mary was working, and again, the 30 minutes here is just arbitrary. How you calculate it for yourself, there's actually a whole algorithm we would do. And really what you do is you want to figure out how long can you do something before pain kicks in, before pain flares up for you. That might be standing for like 10 minutes. It might be being able to work, for like 20 minutes. It might be something longer. But what you want to do is you want to get that number and then knock 20% off of it. And that's a pretty fair place to start for a lot of people. But if you need another rule of thumb, just divide it in half. So, if you can feel like you can, work for 20 minutes or stand for 20 minutes before your pain gets worse, cut that in half and just say, I'm only going to work for 10 minutes and then I'm going to go rest for 10 minutes. And the key thing that you're doing here, and I don't have a picture of this, but I need to create one, is that your activity levels, you're trying to stay below your nervous system alarm bells. Because if you can do that, then you can actually still engage in activities, but you avoid the pain flare up or the fatigue flare up, which can happen too, which really just means that all of a sudden your energy just evaporates and you spend the rest of the day like on the couch or kind of in bed. I know this kind of concept can be a little confusing, but it kind of highlights the idea of what you're trying to do when you're living with pain is you're trying to work smarter, not harder. And you're trying to find ways to, it's not that again, that your pain is in your head. It's not, it's in your body. Like your pain's everywhere. Like it's wherever the injury is at and wherever things have been made worse, like where they get kind of irritated, that's where the pain's at. But your brain has a huge role in either helping you to move forward in life with that pain, or it has a huge role in totally hijacking your life and taking over. And then that's usually where most of my clients like get stuck because the pain is kind of taken over. So let me kind of pause with that. I know I said a whole bunch of stuff tonight. I mean, what questions do you guys have about this stuff? Like what, either Jerome or Christy or anyone else? Like, I know there's a lot to this stuff.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the first thing that I think might be worth spending another minute on. I think it was really important, and there were several people who kind of said, aha, or oh, wow. When you mentioned the relationship burnout that happens when people are living with chronic pain. And I don't know if you have a minute to explain that, but one thing that came to me was that the burnout comes not because they're tired, the other person, your significant other, and maybe you could have compassion for them too, is not because they're tired of hearing about it, but because probably at some point they just don't know how to help you. And that's all people really want to do when somebody's in pain or when somebody's hurting, is help another person. And so it's probably hard to be the other person if you don't have an answer, I would think. Is there something to that?
Absolutely. I would say, pain and significant others and family members and friends are really good examples of burnout and burnout that happens quickly, just like it does for caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's primarily because of the way that pain, number one, saps your energy. And then number two, pain really starts telling you a couple of kind of core beliefs that you start believing about yourself. If you're the person living with chronic pain,
Mm-hmm.
is that you feel like there's no way out, that life is just going to kind of get worse a little bit. And it really kind of just, you start really having these negative thoughts about your future. And what's really kind of interesting is that there's a difference between experiencing pain and then pain moving into suffering, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Mm.
So a lot of times people can get the two things kind of combined, of like pain is suffering, and they kind of
Mhm.
combine the two. And why this has such a huge impact on significant others is because the people that love about you and care about you don't want to see you in pain. They don't want to see you struggling. And
Mhm.
so they try as much as they can to help you. But here is and I say this, I say this in the most kindest, compassionate way that I can to my clients. I'll say it to you guys too, is that no one can rescue you from your pain except you. Your partner will not be able to rescue you from pain. Your family will not be able to rescue you from pain. These are things that you have to choose for yourself. And that's such a hard thing to hear, I think, for a lot of us. I mean, right? Like, I mean, you hear that message and you're like, what the heck? Like, like, have some compassion. And you do have compassion. But
Mhm.
this is one of the kindest things that you can do for yourself if you're living with chronic pain, is just acknowledge that, oh my gosh, like this has taken over my life and I have choices in front of me. I can choose to let the pain continue to be in the driver's seat of this stuff,
Mhm.
or I can choose to start living my life and doing the stuff that matters to me, the stuff that's important to me, even with that pain still being on the bus with me. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you rediscuss pain versus suffering? That's
Mhm.
interesting.
Mhm.
Yes, no, great question, or a great kind of piece on there. So the interesting thing about that we know with pain is that pain is very much a sensory kind of experience. You can experience pain in a couple different ways. And although I want to be clear, I'm talking about physical pain in this instance, not like emotional pain. Like emotional pain would be like, like grieving, like so you lost someone significant to you, um, or like a relationship challenge or something like that. That would be like emotional pain. Like chronic pain is more of a sensation experience where you just hurt, or you just ache,
Mhm.
or you just feel like you got no energy or anything like that.
Mhm.
And that's the experience of pain. But when that pain moves into suffering, is when you start dwelling on all of the things that pain has stolen from you. So maybe you've stopped doing hobbies that you were interested in before. Like I work with a client who loves model railroads, and like kid you not, like had massive like garage full of, like, it's actually really impressive, like massive garage full of, model railroading and like multiple levels and all these things, like super neat stuff. But the pain, and granted this pain was more arthritic pain in the fingers, the pain just literally stole this entire hobby away
Mm.
from him. And the interesting part about this was that the pain pulled away the ability to do it, but then the suffering kind of set in when he started withdrawing from other things, like going to other, model railroad kind of meetup kind of activities. Stop going to, like, looking at new things, and going on group kind of events and experiences. So it's almost like it kind of compounds itself. And that's
Mhm.
really when it starts turning into suffering. Does that kind of make sense, Jerome?
Mm.
That
Yeah,
helps. That helps.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something just occurred to me too. And I would think, because we've heard this with bariatric patients when they're sort of going through the process of trying to get help for different other sort of comorbidities or things that, go along with obesity, that there's a huge amount of frustration in dealing with the medical community sometimes, and getting help or getting people to listen and understand and not focus on, well, it's all because of your weight, right? Well, if you would just get your weight down, then this wouldn't be a problem. And so I would think that with pain, that there may be similar frustration for people when they're dealing with their doctors, and just in terms of how to communicate with them about the levels of their pain and where they're feeling their pain and when the pain is sometimes better or not, and how to get the right kind of help for that. And I don't know if you have any advice on how to communicate with your doctor about pain.
Absolutely. So I would say, number one, this is a huge issue for every client of mine that lives with chronic pain, is that, especially if you're living with excess body weight, it's almost like you have like a double stigma attached. And that, number one, I'll just be honest, a lot of people in the medical and healthcare kind of professions, they make really error-prone assumptions about people. They say that, you're living with excess body weight and it was, your choice, or because you just couldn't stop eating food, which we know there's a lot of stuff that influences what living with extra body weight is. It's not just about willpower and choice and those things. And then on top of that, you throw in the stigma of living with chronic pain, where a lot of medical providers assume that maybe you're drug seeking, or you might be addicted to your painkiller, or that you're just there to, again, do something again that's just, there's this label assumption that says that you're not trying to just be a human being who's in suffering, if that makes sense, who's in a rough situation. So a big piece that is helpful is you actually learning what we call assertiveness skills. And these assertiveness skills are where you're learning to, you go into a medical visit and you say, thanks so much, doctor, for this kind of piece here. What I'm here for is to talk about this specific pain and this specific piece, and what's our plan for that. And your doctor may have said, we've exhausted all options, there's no other medical intervention. Because, a big piece that happens for healthcare providers is, they're in a helping profession too. They want to help people get better. And unfortunately, with pain, almost every one of the clients, by the time they come to see me, they've had multiple procedures of some kind. They've had injections like crazy. They've tried so many different medications. They've seen physical therapy. They've seen a chiropractor. They've seen everything. They're on their medical marijuana. They've tried all these things. And really, the very last thing is usually when they come and see me, which is really it's kind of odd. It should be flipped around, but
right.
But what happens, a lot of medical providers, they get frustrated when they can't help anymore, or when they've exhausted, the surgeries. And what I can tell you, it's hard to really make a blanket statement about surgery, but what I can tell you in general for pain pieces, surgery is just something you really want to think twice about. And it's something that you just want to definitely get more than one opinion about from a pain perspective, primarily because surgical interventions for pain don't always have the best track record of giving you pain relief. And for a lot of my clients, the pain actually gets worse if they've had multiple kind of surgical interventions. So again, I'm not here to tell anybody to make a decision. I'm just saying get multiple opinions, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah, that includes back pain, I think, among others. Yes.
Absolutely.
100%.
So, Dr. Bond, I think the next most important question then is, can you connect the dots for us on how living in chronic pain may also affect the weight that you're dealing with, or managing your healthy weight, how it makes that more complicated?
Absolutely. So yes, so great question. And thank you, Christy, for giving me some patience to get to this point. Because so number one, pain is a complex area. And then number two, so is weight and living with excess body weight. And then the really frustrating part is when these two overlap, oh my goodness, there's a lot happening there for a lot of people. But what we absolutely know about when you live with chronic pain, you start to disengage from activities, including movement, including kind of exercise. And unfortunately, it kind of creates this feedback loop of where, there's different levels of activity. There's what we call there's sedentary activity, which is just sitting on the couch. There's non-sedentary activity, which is kind of like getting up and maybe checking your mailbox or maybe kind of walking around your home a little bit. And then there's actual physical activity, which can have varying levels of exercise and those types of things. But what we know is that people with chronic pain tend to start reducing physical activity, and they even start to reduce non-sedentary activity. And there's a secondary process that shows up, which is that as you start reducing movement, your muscles themselves also start to change, meaning that you might experience different pains or different kind of sensations. There's actually a really good reason why seeing a physical therapist is so important from this perspective, because you can develop what's called kinesiophobia, which is really this fear of movement, this fear that if I am active or if I move my legs or my arms in some way, that I'm going to be in more pain than when I started. And so because of that, you start really restricting your range of motion. I would say the places that I see this the most for a lot of my clients is clients that literally start changing how they walk to avoid kind of how they're coping with pain. And unfortunately, once this cycle starts, it really creates a really powerful feedback loop, right? Because we talked earlier about how pain, is really good at what it does. Pain is really good at making you stop doing the thing that feels uncomfortable. And the goal with this is not that you need to push through the pain and make it worse, but that you got to be smarter with how you respond to your pain, not necessarily just throwing brute force at it. Does that make sense, Christy?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, and then I was going to add on top, as it relates to kind of eating too.
Yeah.
It's pretty common to use, foods to cope with poor mood. And especially if pain, we already know you can kind of get really kind of depressed. Pain also can really mess up your sleep too. So you get bad sleep, you get insomnia that really starts showing up. You have the pain, which means it's harder to move. And then you're like, gosh, I just want to eat something that makes me feel better. Because to be honest, it can be one of the few pleasurable experiences you might have in your life. And, I'm not here to hate on Oreo cookies, but if an Oreo cookie is, one of the few pleasurable things that you have in your life, it makes absolute sense to me why you would eat something like that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so the goal is not that foods are bad per se, but recognizing the cycle of all this stuff and helping you to make better choices, including the bites that you guys have are so delicious, including making just healthier choices like that, right? Where there's things, if there can be a higher protein option there, or something that's not going to be as calorie dense as an Oreo cookie. But all those things kind of intertwine together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And all those stress hormones too, if you're saying, if you're living in sort of chronic alarm bells and those stress hormones are, always on, on the high, they make fat storage easier too.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So that's, wow. Yeah, that is a
You got it.
terrible cycle. So if someone feels like they're in this cycle, I'm in pain, I'm not moving very much, my muscles are sort of, they don't feel good when I do move because I don't do very much. And, and all I feel like is eating. And I know that it's causing problems with my weight. The more weight I gain, the worse my joints feel or the worse my muscles feel. I mean, it is really, truly a cycle. The self-care stuff is a great place to start, I would think. What else would be a first or second, third step to sort of helping them work their way out of this?
Great question. So absolutely, yes, self-care is a great place to start. But I would also say you need more than just self-care. So you need more than just kind of being really kind and compassionate to yourself, which is so important because most of us, right, we beat ourselves up about this stuff. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm making all these bad choices. So self-care is a great place to start. The number two place to start that is so important is take a really hard look at your environment that's around you. And what I mean by that is your home, and maybe even your office or workplace, wherever you're, if you spend a lot of time at the workplace. And I really want you to think of how are the things around you in your home set up to either help you be active and to move and to make healthy food choices? Or how are the things around you set up to make you like go through the drive-through at McDonald's every day, if that makes sense? And the key piece on this is, and I just picked on McDonald's, no hate on any of them, but I just picked on the one that came to my mind first. But the key piece on this is literally your environment has such a huge, sway over you. Let me ask you this, for almost everyone out there, and put this in the comment box. Do you have a television in your living room? Like most people probably do.
Yes.
Probably
Yes,
like, yes,
I do.
yes.
I do.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Most of us, absolutely. And what do you do in that room? What do you do in your living room or wherever there's a television?
I
Sit.
sit and watch TV.
Absolutely. You sit in that
Yeah.
room.
Yeah.
And this is an excellent example of how much we create an environment around ourselves that achieves the current habits that we have right now. So if we want to begin to make a change to our habits, like maybe we want to, make the TV less of a centerpiece, or we want to make activity a little bit more, you have to change your environment to support new habits. And what I mean by that is maybe you put your TV in a cabinet that gets hidden, when it's not watching. Maybe you put some chairs to face each other so that you might have a conversation. Or maybe you put your treadmill or whatever device, or you have one of those like little foot pedalers there. Maybe you put that right in front of you. Or maybe you move your TV to your, if you have an exercise room, you move it there. Or, there's all sorts of ways you can change and adjust your environment. And the key part that almost everyone, I think, gets wrong about making habit change is that what matters with your habits, it's not intensity, it's consistency. And so what I mean by that is so many of us, like, January 1, we're like, woohoo, I'm gonna do it. I'm
But
gonna
run a marathon.
Absolutely, right. And we have a ton of intensity, but I can absolutely guarantee you intensity is not the challenge when it comes to habit change. It's consistency. It's you doing something on a small level first. And a key thing too is also you have to build the habit before you can strengthen the habit. So the worst thing that I see a lot of my clients do is they're like, okay, doc, we talked, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. And I'm like, okay, like, I love the thinking there. Great job. But what I tell them is I would rather you go to the gym for 2 minutes a day, 5 days a week, than to have you go to the gym 3 times a week for 30 minutes a day. And the reason is that it's not about intensity. It's not about you throwing time and energy at the gym. It's absolutely about you getting in the habit and the routine of going and doing the gym or some kind of exercise, if that kind of makes sense. Does that kind of make sense?
Perfect.
Makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. Okay, so self-care, change your environment, or sort of look at your environment and see how it can be more productive for you, more positive for you. And then anything else that they should start doing right away?
I like the meditation exercise that we did at the beginning, both for relaxation and a sense of distance. So you step back a little bit.
Yeah, away from the pain.
I think a huge piece, and I kind of mentioned this earlier too, is also just thinking through your values, like, and thinking through what's important to you. And, just kind of asking yourself, if this pain was not in the driver's seat of my life, if this pain was not making decisions for me right now, what would I be doing with my life? Like, what would I ultimately be doing? And a key part, and I tell all of my clients, or at least I think I do, I hope I do a good job remembering this, but is that my goal when I'm working with you is that it's not, yes, we're going to work on, the weight loss. Yes, we're going to work on helping you manage your pain and make, get some pain relief. And yes, we're going to help you get better sleep. But ultimately, my goal is that you get back there and you start living life again. Like you get out there and you start doing the stuff that's important to you, because that's what matters. Yes, we can work on this other stuff and it will happen. But what really matters is what's going to be important to you. And holding those values in a way that you can be a little bit flexible with. So, I had one guy who was like, yes, I can't wait to get out there and like run a marathon again. And I was like, well, I mean, you can run a marathon again. I was like, or how about we just shoot for like, taking a walk for like, 20 minutes a day. Like we can get to that goal. And I would say it's just having some flexibility with that will go a long way too, if that makes sense. So
Yeah. There's a question in the chat, and I'm not going to ask the question exactly how it is in the chat, but for people who, this is back on the relationship thing, for people who have a relationship that the person has been exhausted, let's say, how can they reapproach that person and sort of maybe try to reconnect with them saying, hey, this is kind of where I've been. I understand where you are. I'm not really sure how that conversation goes, but how can they re-engage their person who maybe they've exhausted?
Try
yeah,
for a reset. Yeah.
Mhm.
absolutely. I would say, so number one, couples counseling is huge in this. So
Mhm.
especially, if it's a really significant kind of stressor that's shown up. Um,
Mhm.
but I would say, so it depends on who we're thinking of. Are you thinking of from the person living with pain who wants to re-engage with their significant other, or the
Mhm.
significant other that says, hey, how can I support my loved one that's
The
in pain?
person who's been living with pain, wanting to sort of like reconnect or reach out to the other person.
Okay, excellent question. So great, and the answer is because it's going to be different depending on who it is.
Mhm.
Um, but so for the person that's been living with pain and wants to genuinely reconnect with like their loved ones or their significant other and say, "Gosh, like tell me what this has been like." The way to do that is just to genuinely just sit down and say, "Oh my gosh, like I recognize that pain has just taken over a lot in my life, and it's impacted our relationship and our connection." And really asking them, and this is going to be a little hard to hear, but asking them, can you tell me what it's been like to be near me for the past couple years?
Mm.
And listen to that without reacting to that is going to
Mm.
be a key piece on that. um,
Wow.
and the reason why is it's you have to validate before you can move on and start repairing. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yes. Whatever it is that they've been feeling, whether you understand it or not, their feelings are their feelings.
Yep,
Yes. Yeah.
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
Even stuff that you don't agree with, or you're like,
Hmm.
oh, I think that was totally like off, off base or whatever. It's okay. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter. It's what they interpreted it as. Um,
Hmm.
and that's a key part. Another, I think, key part too, if you're the one living in pain, is to focus on trying to build more positive moments with your significant other. Um,
Hmm.
I like the analogy of like you think of your relationship like a piggy bank and you're depositing in like, good kind of moments,
Hmm.
good experiences, because there's going to be days when like crap hits the fan and you're just like, whoops, I didn't mean for that to happen, but it did. And then you'll withdraw from the piggy bank a little bit. So I would say the more that you can focus on trying to build positive experiences into your relationship
Hmm.
and saying, you know what, I don't know the answers to this, but at least we can focus on some positive moments together. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
That's great. Yeah,
So
absolutely. Fantastic. I've got a bunch of hands raised and I don't know, they've been up for a while, so I'm going to put all hands down. And if anybody does actually have a question for Dr. Bond, we can maybe take one or two. Oh, we've got several people on by phone tonight. Let me see if we have any hands raised. If you have a question, you can raise your hand. Oh, they're going up and down. Where are they going? There we go. Jerome, do you have any questions in the Q&A or anything that's come to
No,
mind?
we're good on the Q&A.
Okay.
But what about, part of this is, and it might be a little bit out of the scope because it's the medical side of it,
Mm-hmm.
mhm,
Mm-hmm.
but what's the right process to try to get the best care
mhm,
from medical in terms of someone was asking a question that was kind of complicated. One
mhm,
thing causes another thing. And so you almost have to work. Uh, what if I try this? What if we try that? Talk to the doctor about this, talk to doctors. What else can I try? And all of that. But it's sort of developing an understanding of the options or the approaches.
mhm. Great question, Jerome. And I would say this is the one that's truly challenging because, so number one, pain and each person's experience of pain can be very different. And as well as the medical care that you might have available to you locally or regionally, or if you can
Mhm.
travel,
Mhm.
potentially kind of nationally from that perspective. Um, so how you would begin to kind of navigate this is just being curious and gathering a lot of information, and writing down your questions, and specifically coming into some of your doctor's visits, I would say with questions already written down. And you can maybe pre-submit those to your doctor, so your doctor knows what's coming, or follow up with like a secure message, or like a portal message to your doctor to follow up on stuff like that. And the reason why this is so important is that it's hard because there's always going to be different opinions about what's the best kind of course of treatment from that perspective. And so that's where I would say being an advocate for yourself very much also means kind of being informed about all of the potential things that are out there, as well as being very curious, and not just kind of not just taking one medical opinion, as the only way to view something. Definitely kind of get multiple out there. That makes sense?
Yes,
Absolutely.
I've talked once or twice on these groups about a book I rather like called How Doctors Think.
Mhm.
And it's not perfect, no book is, but
Sure.
it kind of gets you into the other person, because you're trying to enlist that other person to help you
Mhm.
and think about your problem and how you work with them in the most constructive way possible, understanding what's on their mind.
Mhm.
Because a lot of them are so time stressed and busy right now. It's very difficult.
Absolutely. I would say I haven't read that book, Jerome, but it sounds like that's a
Mm.
great recommendation, because
Mm.
I think that another key piece of what makes the pain experience so just honestly just atrocious is it's how you navigate the healthcare system too.
So help us
Yeah.
with this. Okay, so I'm sitting in the waiting room, and my doctor comes in, and I can tell that he or she is busy,
Mhm.
and all of that. And I've learned in How Doctors Think that pretty commonly, from when I start talking, within 30 seconds, the doctor's going to start going a little bit towards closure and forming a hypothesis on what's wrong.
Mhm.
And with pain, that's almost a surefire formula for not getting it right.
Mhm.
Is there something, it reminds me of the little setup that you did before. Is there something that you would maybe say to the doctor to kind of slow them down and get them to pause
Mhm.
and say, this is going to, you know where I'm trying to get to. Help me with some words. This one's not going to be, I'm afraid my problem might not be easy to answer in the first minute or two.
Great question, Jerome. So, and here's one that I would say, it really depends on the specific situation and that doctor.
Yeah.
Because some doctors may have compassion and may kind of or they might have time to listen. I think a lot of them are very compassionate but very stressed on time and don't have the ability to have longer than kind of 30 seconds. I think a key part on this is, if you have your questions ready to go either before the visit and they can be submitted early, or you give them right to the doctor, I think that's a helpful way to go through that. But
Yeah.
again, that's not foolproof. Like, yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I would concur that something on paper, remember that doctors are students, they're studiers, they're
Mhm.
people who have done a lot of reading.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily people who have always been super successful socially, right? They've spent a lot of time doing book work. Hand them a piece of paper with your questions, not overwhelming, but maybe I want, this is what's happening. This is what I'd like to work on. This is what I've tried. What's next? But it's another way to try to communicate with them if you don't always feel that verbal communication with your particular doctor is going well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good. Well, we are right up to the last minute here, and we have not picked a raffle winner yet, although I think we finally did get somebody who tried to raise their hand. Let me see if this person wants to talk for 1 second.
have to go a little quickly at this point, but
Okay. Oh, no,
there
maybe.
we go.
There we go.
Okay.
Oh, yep. Here we go. It's Lovey. Lovey, are you there? You get to click your little microphone.
There we go.
Yes, I'm here.
Hello there.
Hi.
I met Lovey in Las Vegas just a couple weeks ago, or a week ago or so.
Yes, that was fun. I won tonight.
Yes. Yes. Do you have you raised your hand? Do you have a question for us, Lovey?
No, that must have been my hand slipping while I was writing and taking notes. It's been such a great
Oh,
meeting
oops.
tonight.
Oh,
Sorry.
great. Well, I'm
right.
glad we get to chit chat
Bye.
again, but no questions. Okay, bye.
All right, let's do
All
a
right,
winner here.
here we go.
Christine.
Here we go with the winner.
I'll watch the chat if you watch the hand raises.
Okay. All right. The winner tonight is Chastity Leal. Chastity. Chastity or Chastity? I can't tell if that T is before the I. My eyes are not so good. Chastity Leal.
There she is. She says, thank you.
Yay. Congratulations, Chastity.
So you have to
Chastity.
send your information to supportgroup@unjury.com. What else do we need? Address,
Just mailing
name,
address. Yep.
name, address, maybe an email and a phone just in case.
Just in case. Yep,
That would be great.
absolutely. And we'll get
Congratulations.
your UNJURY prize out to you. And just for everybody out there who's doing the March for Me challenge, just want to remind you today is March 23rd. We've got 1 week to go. But when the challenge is over, the challenge isn't over. This is something that we were hoping to help you build new habits, just like Dr. Bond was saying. Don't pick the hardest thing, but pick something you can be consistent with. And that's what we encouraged everybody to do when they picked their exercise goals. And of course, your 30-30-30 protein goals are forever. So keep those going. And yes, you will get the recording. Yes, if you live in Florida and you want to connect to Dr. Bond, please send us an email and we'll tell you how to do that. And what else?
Next week is the grand wrap up for March for Me.
Big celebration.
And everyone has the option of being on camera for that one. We had hundreds of people on camera last time, but some people were not visible, and that's fine too. But we're always happy no matter what. But we'd love to have you join us to celebrate March for Me, talk about it, and what it can do for you.
Yes, people are wearing their blue shirts.
And remember that there aren't many companies who care about you as much as UNJURY does. So there you go. And
yes.
people like Dr. Bond are so awesome.
Thank you guys for letting me be here. I appreciate it.
Oh my God, I hope you were reading the chat. People were just raving about this session.
Yeah.
And how helpful it was.
This was an important one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there you go.
To those of you who have not received your shirt yet, we're sorry, but don't worry. They are so backed up. We had a couple people out of the warehouse. They're all coming. Everything hasn't shipped yet. So they're coming. They're coming. It's been this sort of progression of getting everybody out over a period of a couple of weeks, and there's still stuff being shipped. So hang in there.
Yep.
All right, everybody. Dr. Bond, thank you again. We always love having you, and we hope you'll come back again sometime. We'll talk dates and new topics, and we'll look ahead. But to everybody out there, we're going to give ourselves one last bit of self-love tonight and self-compassion with our own little virtual hug. Yes.
Group hug. Hugs to everyone.
Group hug, everybody.
Hugs,
all right.
And we'll see you next week.
Great.
Bye.
Good night.
All right.
Good
Bye,
night, Dr. Bond.
Bye.
Good night.